Tonight, you lock your front door, turn off the lights, and fall asleep without a single thought of danger. Your street is quiet, your air is clean, your water is safe to drink. Now imagine all of that disappears. Imagine you wake up in a medieval city instead of your bedroom. No streetlights, no plumbing, no locks that actually work. You would not survive the first hour the way you think you would. Here is the real answer. Surviving one night in a medieval city was not about swords or plague. It was about knowing things you have never had to learn, things your ancestors knew instinctively, and things you have completely forgotten. Start with the smell. Before you see anything, you would smell it. Historian Carole Rawcliffe has spent years studying medieval public health records, and her research shows something surprising. Cities were not the filthy chaos we imagine. They had rules, strict ones. Butchers were forbidden from dumping blood in certain streets. Latrines had to be a fixed distance from wells, but rules only work if people follow them, and at night, nobody was watching. So the smell would hit you first. Sewage, animal fat, smoke from 100 chimneys with no filters. Your modern nose has never processed anything like it. Within minutes, you would probably gag. That is not weakness. That is your brain, wired for a world of purified air, rejecting the air its ancestors breathed every single day. Now think about the dark, real dark. Not the orange glow of a city at night, but a darkness so complete you cannot see your own hand. Medieval cities had almost no public lighting. A few wealthy areas might have a torch bracket outside a merchant's home. Everywhere else, you were on your own. Would you even know which direction to walk? Streets were not laid out in grids. They twisted around old property lines, some of them centuries old before the city even had walls. Historian Ian Mortimer, who has spent his career reconstructing daily life in medieval England, describes how easy it was to become disoriented within a few dozen steps. No moonlight to speak of because the smoke and low buildings blocked half the sky. No addresses, no numbers, no app to save you. You would be lost within minutes, and lost at night was dangerous. Curfew was not a suggestion. Most cities enforced a bell, sometimes called the curfew bell, a word that comes from the French for cover fire. When it rang, doors closed, hearths were smothered, and anyone still outside became suspicious by default. Watchmen patrolled with clubs, not to protect wandering strangers, but to question them. If you could not explain yourself convincingly, you might spend the night in a cell instead of a bed. But let's say you avoid the watch. Let's say you find shelter in a doorway or an alley. You are not safe yet, not even close. Paleopathologist Piers Mitchell has spent years examining medieval cesspits and skeletal remains, and his findings are unsettling. Intestinal parasites were nearly universal. Roundworm, whipworm. Not from bad luck, but from daily exposure most people never thought twice about. Contaminated water, unwashed vegetables, meat handled without any real separation from raw sewage running just a few feet away. You would not need to eat anything strange to get sick. You would only need to breathe the air, touch a doorframe, or drink from the wrong well. Here is where your instincts would fail you the most. You trust hunger, you trust thirst. Your body tells you to eat when it's hungry and drink when it's thirsty, and normally that instinct keeps you alive. In a medieval city, that same instinct could kill you. Clean water was not obvious, it was not labeled. Wells near the wrong latrine looked exactly like wells that were safe. Your body has no built-in ability to detect what killed thousands of people who trusted it the same way you would. So what would actually keep you alive? Not your survival instincts, not fear, knowledge. The people who survived medieval city life longest were not the strongest. They were the ones who understood which wells to avoid, which streets to walk, which hours to stay hidden, and which sounds meant danger versus which sounds meant nothing at all. That knowledge was not written down anywhere accessible to you. It lived in the minds of people who had learned it by watching others get sick, get robbed, or get arrested. You have none of that knowledge. You have never needed it. Think about what your senses are actually trained for. Car horns, not wagon wheels on cobblestone. Bright screens, not the shape of a shadow holding a knife. Your entire nervous system has been calibrated for a completely different threat landscape. Every alarm bell in your body would be going off, and almost none of them would be pointed at the right danger. Let's go further. Say you survived the first hour. You've found a doorway, you've avoided the watch, and now your body demands something else. Warmth. Medieval nights, especially in autumn and winter, could drop far colder than most people expect, and you have no fire, no blanket, and no idea which buildings might let you in. Would you knock on a stranger's door? Hospitality had rules too, and they were older than the cities themselves. Travelers were often taken in, fed, and given a place to sleep because turning away a stranger was seen as inviting misfortune. But that hospitality was built on trust signals you do not have. Your clothes would look wrong, Your accent would sound wrong. Your questions would reveal almost instantly that you did not belong to this world at all. In a time when strangers were rare and outsiders were treated with suspicion by default, standing out was not a minor inconvenience. It was a direct threat to your safety. Now picture the sound. Not silence like you might expect, but a strange kind of noise. Historian Emily Cockayne has documented how loud medieval nights actually were, filled with barking dogs, creaking carts on cobblestones, drunken arguments spilling out of taverns, and the occasional cry of fire that could send an entire street into panic. Fire was the true nightmare of any wooden city. Buildings packed close together, thatched or shingled roofs, open flames for light and heat. One knocked-over lamp could turn a street into an inferno within minutes, and there was no fire department coming to save you. There were buckets, chains of neighbors passing water hand to hand, and a desperate hope that the wind wouldn't shift. Would you even recognize the danger in time? Your ears have never had to separate a real fire alarm from a stranger's shouting match 2 streets over. Then there's the question of who else is awake with you. Night was when the city's rules loosened the most. Curfew existed precisely because officials knew that darkness invited a different kind of behavior. Petty theft, smuggling, disputes settled with fists or knives instead of words because no witnesses meant no consequences. You would not know which alleys belonged to which gangs, which taverns were safe to linger near, or which quiet corners hid an ambush. Local residents built this knowledge over a lifetime, passed down through warnings from parents, gossip from neighbors, and their own close calls. You would have none of it. Every corner would look the same. Every shadow would carry equal weight because you'd have no way to tell the dangerous ones from the harmless ones. Here's the strange part. Even if you somehow avoided the cold, the fire, the thieves, and the watch, your greatest enemy would still be invisible. It would be in the water you eventually drank out of desperation. It would be in the food you accepted from a stranger's kitchen without knowing how it was stored. Piers Mitchell's research into medieval sanitation makes one thing clear. The biggest killer in cities like this was rarely violence. It was disease, spreading quietly through systems nobody could see, carried by water, by rats, by unwashed hands, passing bread from one person to the next. Modern life has trained you to trust systems you cannot see, pipes that filter your water, regulations that inspect your food, refrigeration that slows decay long enough to keep you safe. None of that existed. Trust in a medieval city had to be earned through direct personal knowledge, not through invisible infrastructure working quietly in the background. Consider one more thing you've never had to think about: time itself. You check a clock or a phone dozens of times a day without noticing. In a medieval city, time was marked by bells, by the position of the sun, by the rhythm of trades opening and closing their shutters. Without any of those cues memorized, you would lose track of how long you'd been out there. Was it 2 hours until dawn or 6? Your body would have no reliable way to know, and that uncertainty alone could push you into a bad decision, like risking a run through unfamiliar streets simply because you couldn't stand the not knowing anymore. And morning would not save you the way you might hope. When the gates finally opened and the city stirred awake, you would face an entirely new problem: explaining yourself. No papers, no trade you could name convincingly, no family anyone recognized. In many medieval cities, unexplained strangers were treated as a civic problem to be solved, sometimes generously, sometimes not. Ian Mortimer's research shows how quickly a city could shift from tolerant curiosity about a stranger to active suspicion, especially if anything had gone missing or wrong during the night. So even surviving until sunrise would only trade one set of dangers for another. This is not really a story about medieval cities. This is a story about you right now, in a world you think you understand. You believe your instincts would protect you because they protect you today. But your instincts are not universal truths. They are trained responses to the specific dangers of your specific era. Change the era, and the same instincts that keep you safe today would get you killed within hours. That is the uncomfortable part. Every generation believes its own survival skills are timeless. They are not. They are borrowed, temporary, shaped entirely by the century you happen to be born into. Somewhere in a city that no longer exists, someone woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of a watchman's bell, understood exactly what it meant, and went back to sleep without a second thought. That same sound would leave you standing in a strange doorway, heart-pounding, completely unable to tell if you were in danger or perfectly safe. The truth is, you would not survive one night in a medieval city the way you imagine. Not because you're weak, because the version of you built for survival was built for tonight, in your own bed, behind a locked door you have never once had to think about. So tonight, when you turn off the lights and fall asleep without a single thought of danger, remember what that quiet actually is. It is not the absence of threat. It is centuries of knowledge working so well you never even notice it's there.